looks like we are back. I guess we can play that in the background. I mean, there's no audio, so.
I can't hear you.
Well, you can now. It's called I don't have a microphone in my mouth, Cletus. I'm going to go
I don't know where the video...
fishing for some river monsters.
I don't know where the video ended on that last one, but we were like yelling weird accents into the microphone. Anyways,
that was fun. So welcome to part 2 of today's episode.
I kind of feel like with part 2, we can probably just jump into the topic that we were going to be going into today.
Yep, that tracks.
Okay. Anyways, I've wanted to talk about this topic since I started this podcast with you.
Really?
Since I came on.
Since you decided to come on full time.
You invited me full time, so
that's true.
This is your fault.
And you accepted. This is my fault. Well, if you need somebody to blame, I'll take it.
I don't need somebody to blame. I'm actually very happy to be here. Yeah, so we're talking about the conspiracy behind the death of Kurt Cobain.
Ah, yes, the conspiracy.
Because my hero, my legend, my legend sounds so possessive. The
He's
legend.
mine.
He's mine. No, the legend. That was a weird stare for
You're
me.
like, I want to... You just kind of stopped in the middle of it. That was funny. No, I mean, yeah, so I guess the theme for the day is conspiracies, and like I wanted to talk about the conspiracy surrounding the death of Kurt Cobain, which, if you don't know, was the lead singer, songwriter, guitarist of a band called Nirvana, which was huge back in the 90s. And unfortunately, he died in 1994.
April 5th, 1994.
Yep.
Yeah. So the police, Seattle PD, ruled his death a suicide. And they arrived on the crime scene. So let's rewind for a bit. Courtney Love had been calling around because she was thinking that Kurt was missing, when he in fact wasn't really missing. He just wasn't answering her calls.
Was this also around the time that she decided to hire a private investigator?
Yes, Tom Grant.
That's his name, yeah.
Tom Grant. And we love Tom Grant, but Courtney Love doesn't.
Because he was smart and did his job well?
Right, yeah, so Tom Grant is the kind of private investigator that isn't going to just do what his client wants him to do. He's just looking for, like, what the hell happened. Like,
right.
That's what his, like, he knows that's his job. He's like, I'm going to find out, like, the truth.
Yeah, and initially he was hired to find Kurt and figure out what's going on and why she thought that he was missing.
Yeah. I guess an electrician, let's go back. So an electrician had, like, been going to Kurt and Courtney's house to install something. He was doing work on their house.
Yeah.
And when he gets there, he sees a body in one of the, like, through like the window and into their house.
This is the French doors into
what they call the greenhouse, which is like, it's a room behind their house above the garage.
So it's kind of like an apartment. It wasn't really a greenhouse.
Kind of. I don't know. I've never been to this house, so I don't really know how to describe it. That's just how it's been described to me.
Okay.
But that's just what they called it. They called it the greenhouse. But anyways, so the electrician was the one that, like, found the body and, like, reported it. And he had, like, found what am I saying? So he had, like, seen the outline of a body. He, like, saw some blood, and obviously, like, you're going to get spooked. Calls the police show up, and like the French doors were locked. And they were only the way that they identified the body was through his fingerprints. He had his wallet and his driver's license, and they like found like Kurt Cobain, and they were like, the rock star. And of course, when they got an ID on the body through the fingerprints, sure enough, it was him. Excuse me.
Ow, my ears. Sorry.
Their ears. So
Go ahead.
Rewinding. Before this is happening, a couple days earlier, April the 3rd is when Tom Grant gets a call from Courtney Love saying that her husband Kurt has been missing and isn't answering his phone. So of course, like Tom Grant's he's on the job trying to find Kurt. So eventually the day comes where they find Kurt's body, and Tom Grant had like been in the house, been doing investigations. So when Tom Grant shows up to the scene as like the police are investigating, he shows up to the house and he says, "I was here the night before. I have information that might be helpful." So when that information got to the detective told the officer to go back and tell him he's too busy to deal with him right now and to just call the station at 3. Which is absolute bullshit. Because if there's a dead body on a scene and you've got somebody coming saying like that they were there the night before, you don't let that person go. You hold them. And you get whatever information you can from them. You don't just tell them to call back. What?
Yeah, that is very strange.
Yeah. So anyways. So this goes on, and so let's look at the evidence and like what was found on the scene. So they found Kurt's body holding like the shotgun. He was holding the barrel of the shotgun with his left hand, right? So, trigger warning, this is a lot of like...
Yes. Yeah, that's why we put the disclaimers
Okay,
in the
cool.
beginning now so that we can...
So, anyways, he's holding the shotgun, and with his left hand, he had to pull the trigger with his thumb.
Mm-hmm.
So when they
it was upside down, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So when they found the shotgun, he was holding it upside down. And here's where it gets a little bit sketchy. So when you fire a shotgun, the shell shoots out to the right. Now they find the shotgun to his left side,
mm-hmm.
which
means it was right side up when it was fired.
Right, it had to have been.
More than likely, yeah.
Yes. So the police are saying like, oh well, the reason that it's upside down is because when he pulled the trigger, it flipped. Have you ever fired a shotgun before?
Yes, many times.
Okay. So whenever you fire a shotgun, is there any motion at all that flips?
That turns?
It?
No.
Yeah.
It just kicks backward.
Exactly.
Because of science.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
You're pushing projectiles forward, so the force of whatever is attached to that pushes back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So the chamber is like pointed toward what am I saying? Pointed toward his right, but the shell is on his left side. So like it had to be flipped. Like no, shotguns don't do that. So they're also saying, well, like, oh, well, maybe his wrist was turned. No, that is anatomically impossible. Like your hand can't turn that far. Like that's no.
Well, and also is the shell, like what kind of shotgun is it? Because I mean, if it's a pump shotgun, in order for you to eject the shell, you actually have to pump it, which would retract the shell that's already been fired and insert the next shell. So you'd have to cock it in order to release the shell and put the new one in. So that's strange.
Yeah. So exactly.
What else was around him though? Didn't he have his heroin kit was there as well?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, on the shotgun itself, it didn't have any fingerprints on it.
No, that thing was wiped clean.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting.
It
was aliens. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Really quick, gonna come back to the shell. So the only other thing that could have like put the shotgun shell to his left is if like it ricocheted on something else and landed on his left, but there was plenty of open space on his right side. Like nothing could have.
Unless there was somebody, if somebody was shooting him with the shotgun and was on that side, it could have potentially done that. But
yep, exactly.
So there could have been two people.
Yeah, which is what that's my thought. That's what I think it is. But so, but yeah, so when they did the autopsy report, Kurt had, I believe it was 3 times the lethal dose amount of heroin in his body. So anybody that is under that kind of influence, how in the hell are they going to be able to like function with a shotgun? Like how does that work?
Assuming that he was still alive when, whether it was administered to him before it happened or after it happened. I mean, it would really kind of depend like what the levels were in his bloodstream. But yeah, I mean, if you shoot yourself up with 3 times the lethal dose of the levels of overdose, yeah, I mean, you're not functioning. You're pretty much dead at that point. Number one. Number two, something that's really interesting, especially when it comes to drug addicts, is they do build a tolerance. So they do. So you could actually take more than what would normally person like somebody who doesn't take drugs. Also, you'd have to factor in body weight, mass and all that stuff as well.
Right. But like he wasn't a very big guy.
No, he was very small.
And
probably your build. Like he's slender.
And like say what you want about like the tolerance thing, but like that much heroin. Well, I don't care how high your pain tolerance is.
Even
that much should
3 times. Yeah, 3 times the amount of a normal person. Even with him, like maybe 1.5 times the doses, maybe he could have still been awake and aware and not unconscious. However, I would probably assume that 3 times the amount of a normal person would be overdosing. He'd be unconscious.
Yeah, you're not gonna function.
I'm just assuming
unconscious or dead.
Allegedly.
Like that's an overdose.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
that's too much for your system to handle. That's not
overdose doesn't necessarily mean dead. Overdosing means that you've taken so much that you have basically slipped into unconsciousness.
Right. Yeah. It's like didn't word that right. That's yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying for the audience.
Where was I with this? Oh yeah. So here
toxicology report.
Right. So there was that. There's also on the scene, what they also found next to him was his suicide note, which the note is kind of weird because if you look at the note, there are pictures of it. You can look for them. There are pictures of this note. So you have like an entire body of this note that's talking about like his relationship to music, and then like the bottom part of the note looks like the handwriting is a little bit different. And it looks like it may have been forged, and like that part of the note looks like all the wording in it is more like talking about his family. Like it talks about, oh, my wife Courtney, she'll be so much better without me. I love you. Like all like
classic suicide
stuff
note
stuff that you expect to find in a suicide note.
Right.
But like just the vibe of that part of the note and the top half of the note is just totally different vibes. Completely different. And then you go to the people that knew him best. His best friends, like they're talking about how like Kurt wasn't suicidal. Like we always thought that he was more optimistic. And like granted, Yes.
And
like it's hard to tell. But I mean, like, you go back to a lot of his interviews and he talks about, like, you know, when I'm older, like, I want to be more of that person that plays an acoustic guitar and can just sing and just sit in a chair, because when I'm older, I don't think I'll be rocking out to grunge rock as much as I am now. So, like, I don't feel like that is someone that's, like, thinking about killing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just doesn't add up, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying there, because yeah, not only do you have interviews about him, you know, talking about his future, a lot of testimonies of his friends talking about how no, that's not like him. Like, he always talked about his future and what they would do with the band in the future, like what they would do. Even a lot of interviews with Dave Grohl where he talks a lot about, you know, his relationship with Kurt, that they were like really close, very good friends. And he even said, he's like, no, that him being suicidal is not something that was within him, it seemed. However, on the flip side of that, people who are in pain, like with depression, you know, all that kind of stuff, they keep that inside most of the time, and they do what's a lot of called like masking, which is basically portraying what other people would like to see, so that they're not making other people worry. So it's kind of like more of a psychological thing. But again, with friends that are really close, especially if they've had very open and honest conversations, I would definitely lean towards the latter, that he wasn't suicidal.
Right.
That's where I'm at on it.
Exactly. So going back to your point of what you're saying, like, with people tend to like mask it so they don't worry their loved ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't around for that part of the 90s, but like looking at a lot of interviews and just reading a lot of like the conversations that he had, I don't get the impression that Kurt was the kind of person that would mask his emotions like that.
Yeah.
I feel like he would be pretty open about it, and yeah, and like, granted, you look at a lot of the lyrics and they talk about like some
very dark, very heavy stuff.
Yeah, a lot of them are some areas that are more like suggestive and kind of more dark and personal.
Right.
But Kurt Cobain had also said himself, people tend to read too much into my lyrics. Half the time what I write, I just write because I'm lazy. So, and
which is interesting because he is a very good lyricist.
Yeah, he really was.
Lyricist?
That's the right term. Lyricist.
Lyricist is the right term?
Yep.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was lazy writing. I think like it was like really beautiful and very poetic and very deep, often very dark, singing a lot about, you know, the alienation of youth and society and like the systematic what's the word? Suppression of like, you know, thinking and thought.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
but
his songs were absolutely great.
But also, like, if you look back at his life, like, a lot of that is like it's just what he grew up with.
Yeah.
So, like, of course, like the more, like the things that you grow up with more and the things that you experience more, like that's what you're going to write about, because that's what you can put on your brain onto paper.
Yeah. Most people are going to write what they know.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So, but like I was saying, he had said himself, people read way too much into my lyrics. Like, I write what I write. That's just what his vibe was.
Yeah.
So,
and he was a massive troll. I mean, before trolling was an actual thing, he was a massive troll.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the things that he did in interviews. Look at the, like his humor is,
yeah,
he's very actually, you know, And even like I've watched a lot of interviews of Dave Grohl. That's why I keep going back to it. But he often talked about how sarcastic he always was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and his humor was dark, but he was also very sarcastic.
He had
and very playful.
He had that self-depreciating, like sarcastic dark humor that we all have now.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like, no, I shouldn't say we all. That's just.
I mean, yeah.
You and I have that humor. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he was always very self-deprecating, but that was just part of his humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very strange circumstances.
So
anyways, back to
let me go back to like the relationship between but the working relationship between Tom Grant and Courtney Love.
Well, let's talk about. Could we talk about a little bit where Courtney and Kurt's relationship was at that time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's really important before you go back to talking about the investigator with Courtney.
So during this time, Courtney and Kurt were getting a divorce.
Yeah, they were separated at that time, and they were already like kind of talking, like they'd already kind of started that process with each other.
A couple of days before,
according to their friends, maybe.
Right? A couple of days before Kurt's death, I don't remember where he went. He went somewhere. I think he was visiting one of his close friends, and this was 10 miles away from Courtney Love. A quick like 20-minute drive maybe. He chose not to reunite with her at that time. This was confirmed. He was leaving her. Now, if that would have happened, Courtney would not have gotten the money that she received from Kurt's death, which was like, I don't remember how much it was exactly, but it was millions of dollars.
Well, and the continuing royalties off of the music videos, interviews, like anything that was monetized. She's still getting a piece of that because they were married.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's a pretty good motive, because instead of going through the regular process of getting divorced, which probably would have been drawn out, most likely the divorce lawyers would continue to try to get more money out of both of them, and it would be a long, drawn-out process. It probably would have taken years for them to eventually get divorced. That gives her a lot of motive.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Did she do it? I don't know.
I think she did, but I mean, like...
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, we can allege that. I mean, it's a possibility.
I'll come back to that,
her
because
and
like
probably her boyfriend, or...
I don't think she did it herself. I think that she was involved in a conspiracy to kill Kurt Cobain.
So maybe it wasn't her directly doing it, but maybe somebody did it with her there.
Yeah. So possibly. Talk about her ex at the time. His name was Callie. So Callie had also like been a little bit involved. I guess he like helped, or like he left a note for Kurt, like talking about like, you need to call Courtney and let her know that you're okay, and like stuff like that. That's like his involvement in that. I guess he was. I don't know a whole lot about Callie, so if anybody can provide more information on the guy, like please do. But anyways,
was that also the same guy that she allegedly proposed like $50,000 for offing him, or is that somebody else that she tried to hire?
I don't know.
There was someone, I can't remember who it was, but there was somebody that alleged that she offered him like $50,000 or something like that to murder him. Like she tried to put out a hit on Kurt.
Well,
I can't remember the name. I watched a documentary at some point. It's been a very long time.
I watched
again. I should have probably brushed up before we had this conversation.
I watched,
because it's really interesting.
I watched Soaked in Bleach last night for like my third or fourth time.
That's what I started today, but I couldn't focus on it. And
yeah,
there was a lot of images and stuff. There wasn't a lot of talking. And the music is so freaking loud. Whoever mixed that did an absolute terrible job. But I mean, yeah, I just didn't do it. So I apologize.
No, all good. No, but yeah, I was watching Soaked in Bleach last night for like my third or fourth time. But, what was I saying? Yeah, so I can't remember like where exactly I was at in talking about this. Crap.
We were talking about her ex, Cal.
Oh yeah, Callie. So, yeah, but I think that's who was like involved with it too. I think it's possible that Courtney and Callie like did it together, and like that's how they were in it together, and I think one of them like shot him up with that heroin, because like he may have been like Kurt may have been a stoner, but like 3 times the lethal dose, like I feel like that's something
had to be administered to him by somebody.
I feel like that's something that somebody else is going to give to you.
Yeah,
like
you're not. I mean, especially since he was a frequent writer of that and stuff like Rohypnol and like a bunch of other like stuff. I mean, out of all the times that he was on drugs, there was only one that he did an accidental overdose, which is the Rohypnol while they were in.
Oh yeah, the Rome trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like he actually went unconscious and was in a coma for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, very scary stuff.
Yeah, and they came out saying that was an accident.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. He admitted it was an accident. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty legit. Just because, again, he's not he's no stranger to drugs.
Yeah.
So I don't think he would administer that much to himself, and he wouldn't have been able to give himself the second. Definitely would not have been able to give himself a third dose.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't remember how much like they found in it. I have to look that up really quick. I don't remember how much was actually in his system or how much they found. I just remember it was estimated to be like about like 3 times the lethal dose.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of shit. Like,
yeah. Yeah. So more than likely, either they killed him and then administered it to him. I don't remember in the toxicology if there was anything else in his system, like alcohol or anything like that, or maybe like a roofie or something like that to get him to the point where he would be more amenable to take the hits.
Okay, so determined that the level of heroin in his bloodstream was 1.52 milligrams per liter. There was also evidence of diazepam or Valium, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, okay, Valium. Excuse me. I'll give you some volume. I'll pump up the volume.
Pump up the volume. No. So, yeah. So that's 3 times the lethal dose, because I think the average user is like 50. I think 50 milligrams.
Did it not say? And
I think I remember in the documentary that I was watching last night that they said like it's. Well,
I'm going to go off of that because you did watch the documentary like the night before, so I'm assuming you're recalling right. Mm-hmm. If not, again, we are starting to put disclaimers in the front of these, so if we make mistakes, you know what, we're human. We apologize, but you can look up the information if you want to know the details more.
Soaked in Bleach is a great documentary on Amazon Prime. If you have that, great movie, go and watch it. It's like an hour and a half, but yeah. Anyways, so going back to Kurt and Courtney's relationship.
On the rocks. It was rocky.
Yep. Like I said, he was leaving her, and like if he did leave her, then she would have not, like with his death, she would have not gotten like any of that money that was that she would have gotten.
Yeah.
So Kurt had also contacted I think it was their attorney, and requested that Courtney be taken out of Kurt's will. So again, another motive.
Another motive. Yeah.
Okay.
Because wills and testaments are are legally binding. So
Yes.
if he had to change that before he died, then she wouldn't have gotten anything.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
more than likely. I mean,
Right.
she might have gotten something, but yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
So okay.
Don't die.
And
I want you in this world. Don't die on me, sir.
like here we are talking about death, and here I am.
Yeah.
Death.
Well,
No.
it is a very dark. It is a very dark subject, but I mean, it happens to all of us. None of us are getting out of here alive. So
Death is the only thing that we're all going to experience, but nobody knows how to explain.
oh, that's deep.
So let's talk
I
about
like it.
So let's talk about Tom Grant and Courtney Love.
So this is the investigator
Mhm.
in Courtney's relationship, which I remember watching the documentary where he talks a lot about the experiences that he had every time he went over to the house that she was at.
Yeah, so
Always half naked, always on some kind of drug.
yeah, so
Not very coherent.
so Courtney, I think at April 3rd was when she called and hired him.
Which is the day before he was killed? No.
2 days.
2
or
days.
it says that his death was April 5th, but he may have already been dead I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
But
only God knows.
I think the last time Kurt was seen before he went back to that house was April 2nd. I think. It was either April 2nd or it was April 3rd. It was one of those days.
Okay. Anyways, a few days before.
So Tom Grant was hired, like, I think it was on Easter. Like, he was one of the only private investigators that actually answered the phone. So when
If I remember correctly, she tried to call a lot of different people, and he was the only one that answered.
Yeah. So he answers the phone and is like I guess she originally called like about like a credit card and was saying like, oh, well, like this needs to be taken care of like right away. Like me and my husband were like kind of famous, and I guess his partner heard the name Courtney Love and he was just like, wait a minute. And he's like, that's Kurt Cobain's wife.
So he put two and two together very quickly then.
His partner, I don't think Tom Grant knew who they were at the time.
Oh, okay. His partner is like, oh, that's
which actually makes for a much more professional working relationship, because if you don't know them, then it's like,
yeah.
But
yeah.
So anyways, goes over and like he would always describe like whenever he met up with Courtney, she was like wearing something kind of scampy and like was always either on drugs or doing drugs. She was living in what was supposed to be a rehab house, which was definitely not that, because everybody was doing something.
Yeah. She always had lots of friends over too.
Yeah. And
misery loves company.
Yeah. So I guess when like as they're talking, she's talking about like, you know, she was like the credit card that she called about like actually wasn't missing. She actually called the credit card company to cancel the card, so that way that would like cut Kurt off from spending any money.
To try to get him to contact her.
Like that's like manipulative, controlling.
That's like psychopath stuff.
But like so that's how like Tom Grant would like describe her, as like to be like more controlling and very like would always just get very jealous and manipulative anytime she heard that Kurt was with somebody that wasn't Courtney.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, she's got
She was like, oh, I think he's having an affair with my bass player, because Courtney was also in I don't remember the name of her band.
But she was it was Hole.
Yeah, she was playing with another band, and she was
Lily.
thinking that like she was in like Kurt was having an affair with her bass player at the time.
Yeah, she was concocting all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah, like she was also saying like everybody knows it, like everybody knows that Kurt's suicidal, like we all think he's gonna die.
Yeah.
And then like
Gosh, that guy was so smart to record the majority of their conversations, because a lot of that information was in a lot of these different documentaries about
I'm
him.
out of coffee now. Damn it.
You're gonna be up all night, sir.
No, I'll just take my melatonin later. Anyways. But yeah. So the documentary does it so great because it like shows, like it kind of dramatizes the interviews, but like
of course.
the dialogue is like in line with the recorded conversations.
Yeah.
Like they pull up the recording as like the conversations and the dramatized.
Yeah, they do the dramatized, but they have the actual recordings going while
yep.
they're.
Yeah.
And then they go back and like, the guy is talking and it kind of goes back and forth with their conversations. Yeah, it's a really good documentary.
Anyways, that's like a cinematography thing.
Yeah, I love cinematography.
Yeah.
I apologize for getting you off track, but
all good.
But the one I was talking about was on YouTube. That the mixing and mastering of that was absolutely terrible. I don't remember what it is. I'll have to send you the link.
Okay.
But.
Send me stuff. So I think so when we go back to like Tom Grant had heard that Kurt had bought a shotgun. And of course, like you hear Courtney talking about like, oh, Kurt's suicidal, and then Kurt bought a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Put two and two together. It's like, what? So that's when he interviews. He sits down with Kurt's best friend Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
So Kurt had actually, I don't remember exactly what the reason was. I need to go back and do some more reading. But Kurt was not able to buy any weapons at the time. So
yeah, he had his friend buy it for him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Dylan actually got it registered in his name, but he got that shotgun originally because there were some break-ins going on
in the area. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And Kurt was in rehab at the time, and that's what he got it for, is for the break-ins.
Yeah.
He got it for like more of a defense reason, not to like.
Yeah.
But that's what they were saying. So Tom and Dylan are sitting down and they're having this conversation, and Dylan's like, "No, if he was suicidal, I would have never let him get that shotgun. Like, hell no." So anytime that Tom Grant brought up the idea of Kurt being suicidal to his best friend Dylan treated it as if it was a complete joke.
Yeah.
He was just like, "No, like, are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
So put two and two together like that adds up. It makes a little bit more sense. And then fast forward a couple days later, that's where the electrician finds Kurt's body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's called in, and then we go back to what we were talking about before. Tom shows up to the house saying he has information, because the night before, Tom and Dylan had actually gone to the house to like do some searching around to like find any evidence, and the next morning is when they found his body. So shows up to the police, says, "I have information. I was here last night." Like, and then the police tell him to go away. Which, what the hell, Seattle? Like, what?
I don't know what's up with some of these departments that just like mishandle these very large, very public. Like
So
the what was the little girl that was the little girl that was a beauty queen? They had to break in the house and they found her dead in the basement.
I don't know if I know this case.
Wow, I'm completely
You're gonna have to give me a
blanking.
name. So
Why am I blanking?
because
right
I listen to a lot of crime podcasts.
Goodness gracious, why can't I remember this?
Sadly, there are a lot of cases with finding little girls in the basement. So you got to give me a name, which is really sad to say, but
yeah. Well, I should have known. I should have remembered it. So anyways, why can't I think of the name? Ramsey? Oh, John Benet Ramsey case. That's what I was thinking. They completely botched that one. I mean, it's still an open case. It's a cold case still, but it was the information and the evidence was mishandled. The way it was investigated was mishandled.
See, seeing stuff like that just irks me so much. It's like, come on, like, you don't rule a, like, it's a death investigation. It's not, you don't rule it a suicide or a homicide until you do a thorough investigation.
Well, homicide just means that there's a death. It doesn't necessarily mean murder or suicide. It just means there's a death.
Right. But I think my guess is like the police department probably went in. They see a dead guy with a gun in his hand, pointed directly at his head. They're like, "Oh, suicide."
And that's how they portray it to the media.
If it looks like it's a suicide, then they rule it as a suicide.
Is it still ruled a suicide right now and still like an open cold case, or is it closed?
It's ruled. It's
solved.
The case is closed. Yeah, the case is closed and it is ruled as a suicide.
But the evidence points otherwise.
Yeah, Seattle PD, like everybody else that was like looking at it and investigating it that wasn't in Seattle PD is like, what the hell, you need to reopen this case. Like you need to reopen this investigation. Nobody's done it yet.
So right now it's just a closed case, and
yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
The guy that was like in charge of that police department actually got fired. Or he didn't get fired, he resigned when he found out that he was going to be getting fired, because he had been like planning to replant evidence on that scene.
Oh, wow.
And Tom Grant, the private investigator, actually went and like sat down and talked with this guy. I don't remember his name. There's a lot that I'm not remembering here, and I watched the goddamn documentary last night too.
You know, and I really wish I refreshed my memory. But again, I tried to watch the one on YouTube, and I'm just like, this is crap. This isn't what I was looking for.
So anyway, Tom Grant goes to the station and he sits down and he talks with the sheriff that was involved in this investigation, and he was like telling him, like, no, like, first of all, the French doors had like, they didn't have like
it wasn't a key, it was just an inside.
Yeah, it was just the door.
Deadbolt.
It was just the door. It wasn't a deadbolt. It was a doorknob, like the doorknob, the one that you can lock on the inside and close the door behind you.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like that, that in and of itself is like, well, like somebody could have locked the door and walked out right behind.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a bolt or something, but it was just one of those handle locks.
And like the description of the case says that like the door was like there was a chair that was wedged up against the door, but that wasn't the case. The door was just, there was a chair that was in front of the door. Like it wasn't necessarily like it wasn't wedged up against the door. It was just sitting there.
Interesting.
But, yeah. So anyways, so Tom Grant is sitting with this officer, and he's just not hearing him out. He's like, nope, this is a suicide.
Open shut case.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then, like I was saying, so he was going to get fired, and when he found that out, he resigned. And because of like the plot to replant evidence on that scene. So,
how'd they know that he was going to replant evidence on the scene?
Don't know. I really don't know. I wish I knew, but I was not there. I was not around. I didn't do enough reading, so.
Well, I was just wondering, like, maybe like it was like a testimony of one, like his lieutenants or one of the other detectives or something, maybe. That he was just like, hey, we just need to make this concrete. I'm just gonna go throw something on there to make it solid.
Yeah, like I said, soaked in bleach. Like, go watch that documentary or read the stories that have.
Yeah, but I mean, the strangest things of that crime scene was obviously the gun was completely wiped down, so there's no prints on it.
Mm-hmm.
The second the second piece of evidence was a toxicology. He had a lot of drugs in his system, which basically would have inhibited him from being able to most likely inject himself with all of that.
Yeah.
And then perform the act.
You have the suicide
The
note.
suicide note that didn't make sounded like something he would write, and then just kind of goes off, and it looked like it was a second part written for in a different hand.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't they gave that to Courtney, and then they wanted to go back and like actually do some tests on the handwriting to kind of compare it, and
they did. So they got somebody,
and then she wouldn't give it to him for a while.
I don't remember, but I know like they did get someone that like they got an expert to look at that note and like kind of look at the handwriting and compare.
Right.
And this expert did like deduct it is very possible that somebody like actually traced his handwriting and used that to like
to start it, and then
yeah. So
interesting.
So
like it was like probably a page out of one of his lyric books or something like that. They probably traced, and then,
maybe, I don't know, or it might have been the note itself. I really don't know. It's just weird because it's like the top part of the like the body of the note, like the way that it's organized, it looks like it ends like right at the bottom of where that handwriting ends. And then you have this whole, it looks like two completely different notes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find a picture of the note.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some of these very high profile investigations. Like, that's not something you want to mess up. Now I understand, like, maybe that's just how they did it back in the day. They just kind of looked at it and be like, yep, it's this. And they weren't doing a lot of like, back in the 90s, they weren't doing like a lot of like.
So all of this was like what was seen to be Kurt's handwriting, and then that bottom part. If you Google search in the images like Kurt Cobain suicide note, you'll find the picture of the suicide note. But like even like read parts of that note and then read the bottom section, it's completely different. Like two completely different vibes.
Well, yeah, and yeah, the handwriting does change, and it also gets larger.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It looks like something that was written at two completely different times. If anything, if it wasn't written in the same day, then it's just weird. I don't know, man.
I can even look at it from here and decide. Like the P in people here, like 4 people too much. Something, and you go down to the please, like the P's are completely different.
Yeah.
Like the swooping of the E doesn't look right.
Yeah. You see what I mean?
Let me see if I can find an A really quick. Yeah, like the way he did an A for where it says his stomach right here.
Mm-hmm.
It looks almost like a Z. And then when you look at the A here, it kind of looks like one of those old school like A's. Like not like you would normally like English writing. But the A is like kind of like a swoosh and then a loop instead of, it almost looks like a Z, kind of like if you're writing too fast.
Exactly.
That's, yeah.
See, that's what I mean.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but that does look that does look iffy.
It doesn't take an expert to look at that note and be like, "What?"
There's something fishy in it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my.
Because even just reading the note, it's just like the top part of it is like talks about him and his relationship to music, and then the bottom it's like talks about his family, and then it's just like, for her life will be so much happier without me. I love you. I love you. Like in all caps.
Yeah, like it changed. And I mean, somebody could be like, "Oh, well, but like maybe the intensity changed and like his decision like changed, and so that's how his writing changed." And it's like, well, maybe. But I would agree with the latter that there's something fishy about the writing.
Yeah.
After the.
So we got the shotgun, we got the heroin dosage, we got the
Well, the other stuff that was in the system too.
And that. We got the note. We got the motive with Courtney. There's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
there are too many things that just don't line up.
Well, it's very curious too, because if
Okay.
somebody is looking objectively at all the information that they got on this case, I would assume that they would want to be like, oh, maybe we should look into this. It seems like there's more to the story than what we understand.
You know what else I'm just not thinking about is Kurt Cobain was left-handed. He was holding the shotgun with his left hand, which means he had to pull the trigger with his right thumb.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right, but doesn't that seem kind of weird to you? Because I mean, like,
not necessarily, because
I just feel like that's kind of if you're left-handed, wouldn't you pull it with your left thumb?
I think it would depend. But I think if we were assuming that he would just naturally, like if it was grabbing it and placing it, that he would have naturally actually pulled the trigger with his left hand if he was left, his dominant hand was mostly with his left because he was left-handed. That would the assumption could be there. However, like depending on what you're doing, some people would use like their right hand for things depending on what it is. And it also would,
Okay.
if he's ambidextrous, like if he writes with both or, but even like if you go from writing to, I know this is like out there, but if, like I'm right-handed, like when I write, when I shoot a gun, I use my right hand. However, when I was shooting bow and arrow, I shot left-handed because I'm left eye dominant. So like if I'm firing a firearm, like a pistol, like I have to actually kind of like come over a bit more because I can't rely on my right eye. So I have to actually use both of my eyes to kind of line it up to aim and fire. But again, so if he was used to shooting right hand, like maybe he learned firing right-handed, so maybe, he uses right hand. But again, it's like one of those things. That's why it's a conspiracy theory, because nobody will reopen the case and relook at it and try to see if there's a different outcome from what the original detectives originally called it a suicide. And until then, we really aren't going to know. I mean, all the documentaries point to there's, a different outcome when you consider everything.
One day Seattle PD will get a new chief of police, and hopefully that chief will be like, reopen the case because this is weird. And it's been 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt died when he was 27.
Yeah.
He would have been 54 this year.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Probably would have had a couple of other Nirvana albums. Probably would have had a best of.
I think Nirvana was done at that time. Like, remember Dave Grohl had talked about like Nirvana was like getting ready to split.
Yeah, possibly. Or they could be doing a reunion tour right now.
That's true.
Who knows? We can only speculate.
1994 was also the same year that Dave Grohl formed the Foo Fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whole thing started. What a wild ride.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about Grohl and what he talked about after all the whole aftermath, not only with Kirk's death, but they were continually feuding against each other, Courtney, Chris, and Dave. Like they were continually feuding, about who has control of the music, royalties. Like they were constantly like trying to figure that out. It was kind of good that, once they were inducted in the Hall of Fame, or I can't remember when, but they had like buried the hatchet and kind of moved on from everything. But yeah, it was interesting that out of all of that, like he stopped music for quite a while before going back and like basically starting what we know today as the Foo Fighters.
I really do think that, like, man, if he was older, I do think Kurt would have been that guy that just got his acoustic guitar and just became that guy that sat in a chair, and that's how he played his concerts.
Yeah,
I really do think that's how he would have gone. Like, that's the route he would have gone if he was still alive.
Like it would have been a self-fulfilled prophecy that he would have.
Yeah, because like
actually done what he said he was going to do.
Because he talked about that. Like he was always like,
what am I going to do when I get old and gray and I don't?
He's like, I
run around on stage.
I remember watching that interview where he was just like, well, when I think one day maybe instead of being a grunge rocker, I'll just grab my acoustic guitar, sit in a chair and sing, so that way when I'm older I can do music that way. Like that makes sense. I could definitely see him doing that. Would have loved to have seen him doing that.
Wouldn't have been interesting if he came out with like a series of like acoustic albums by Kurt Cobain. That would have been interesting.
Probably would have.
I think he still would have been doing music too, because he was very passionate about music and what it meant to him. He still would have been doing music in some shape or form. Maybe become a producer. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Montage of Heck?
No.
That's a good documentary. That's the documentary that's like.
That was the one I was trying to watch. That was on HBO, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So I think I tried to watch that, but for some reason it wouldn't play in the background while I was working today.
So.
And that's when I tried to do the one from YouTube, which absolutely sucked. So I was like, I'm not going to listen to this crap. I'm just going to go back and listen to Joe Rogan and just wing it tonight.
Yeah.
Which is like every night, but whatever.
No, but yeah, so like, man. Excuse me. But yeah, if you get a chance to watch Montage of Heck on HBO Max, I believe it's on HBO Max. Great documentary. Kind of talks about Kurt's life, his life growing up, and like how he formed Nirvana, and like his life in music and all that.
Yeah,
a lot of like really cool stuff.
What was the name? They had a couple of different drummers before Grohl. Who was their first drummer?
I don't remember who their first drummer. I think they only had two. I think.
No, I think there was a third.
Did they?
I'm pretty sure.
Let's look.
Because they had the guy that they were first playing with, and then they had to get rid of him because when they were doing Bleach, they couldn't get him to play the drums how like Kurt envisioned it. Yeah. And so they kicked him out, got a different person for Bleach. And then like they were like going on tour and stuff. They got a different guy going into, or like I think he like quit like in the middle of a tour or something like that. And then sometime just before they were gonna go record Nevermind album, they got Grohl. And at that time he was in a punk band called Scream, I believe.
So
with Pat, and they like were buddies with like Pat Schmear, who was in Germs. That's amazing that I remember some of this stuff. Wow, I'm impressed.
Nirvana had 5 different drummers before. No, they had 4 different drummers before Grohl.
4, okay. I was close. I said 3.
The first one was Aaron Burkhardt. He played with them for looks like less than a year.
Yeah, he didn't make it.
Dave Foster, who was also less than a year.
Yep.
1988.
Also pre-Bleach.
Chad Channing.
That's the guy that did Bleach.
Okay, so he was from 88 to 90.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Dan Peters for a little bit.
I think he was just a touring drummer, because I think Chad couldn't hack it for some reason. He just couldn't hack the.
Yeah, but then after Dan Peters, they got Dave Grohl.
Yeah,
so
they got him shortly after while they were touring on Bleach and before they went in the studio to do Nevermind. I know some things. I'm pretty smart.
Yeah.
I don't even, honestly, like, 94. Where was I in 94? Let's see. I graduated in 2001.
Oh, so you were like a kid.
Yeah. So I was like, was that 5th grade?
Wow.
Something like that.
So
So I had no idea about Nirvana back then. I didn't honestly find Nirvana until I was like freshman in high school, I think. And then like some of the other guys because we were all like still kind of in that grunge era, because it was still like the late 90s and stuff like that. And so like we had, who did we have? We had Pearl Jam, we had Smashing Pumpkins, we had Screaming Trees, we had Soundgarden. Like we had all these like really great like bands like direct right out of Seattle, who kind of tried their best to carry on the torch of the alternative rock scene at that time, also known as grunge. And I remember like growing up around the kids at that time when we were all kind of discovering all these bands, and then shortly after they discovered Nirvana, they realized that Kurt was dead and that there wouldn't be any other Nirvana albums. And I think shortly after around that time, I want to say in high school, Insecticide came out, which was kind of like a collection of demos that they were possibly were going to do. But again, they were kind of on hiatus.
Yeah, I remember like the grunge rock that I grew up with more in like the early 2000s for me was like 3 Days Grace, Sick Puppies.
And that would be what we would call the post-grunge era.
Yeah.
Another good post-grunge band that came out of that era was Bush.
Oh, yeah.
I
don't think I listened to
Our
that
Lady
a whole
Peace. There's a lot of great post-grunge bands out of there. And they actually were considered post-grunge, which is really interesting. Like they had like this whole genre after the genre.
So the famous person that died in your childhood was Kurt Cobain. For me, it was Michael Jackson. In 2009, I was 12. Yeah, I was like in 6th or 7th grade. But
at that time, I wasn't even listening to that kind of music.
I didn't listen to Michael Jackson until like I had heard that he died. I was like, I thought that was like when I was getting huge into like buying my own CDs and all that stuff. Sorry, I'm coughing a lot. I'm just getting over a cold.
I'm sorry.
But
don't get me sick.
I'm not contagious.
He's got the Rona.
I've had the Rona. This is not it.
Yeah.
So what was I saying? So I remember like buying like one of Michael Jackson's greatest hits. But yeah, and then being obsessed with that album, and then years later, hearing the accusations and like seeing the documentary of the whole thing. That
did you watch Leaving Neverland?
I haven't watched it yet, but like I've read like the story and like the. But anyways,
yeah, like the main kid that would have basically been the clincher in prosecuting him, basically denied everything. And after he passed away. Sometime after they passed away, they did another documentary, and then he revealed.
Yeah, which is like after hearing about all that and like reading it all, I'm like, I can no longer listen to this music. I just can't. I can't turn on any Michael Jackson anymore.
Interesting.
Like, I just have a hard time listening to him now because that's all I think of whenever I turn that music on, and that sucks. But like. It sucks.
So then you have a hard time like taking away the person from the material.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So even though like the music is some of the the greatest music of that era,
Mm-hmm.
and literally was the king of pop. He basically was the Elvis of that era.
Mm-hmm.
You can't listen to it at all.
Mm-mm. I can't. I have a hard time. I really do. I'm just, every time I hear it come on, I'm just like, I need to skip the song, or if like I'm around somewhere where I can like get the song changed, like I will go out of my way to try and change it.
Oh wow!
Because
because you can't separate the artist from the art.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
I really can't.
my wife's the same way. Like she refuses to listen to R. Kelly. Like she can't listen to R. Kelly. She can't listen to Dixie Chicks. I mean, obviously it wasn't as big of a deal. It was more of like their political view that kind of put them in this.
Yeah, I don't know a whole
category.
lot about Dixie Chicks, so.
Yeah, they just basically went on like anti-Bush rants and stuff like that,
Gotcha.
and it really killed their following. But that's a little different than being a sexual predator. That's
Yeah.
a completely different ballgame. Like if it came on, like if I was listening to the radio, like what is radio nowadays? Like, come on, we're in 2021 now. Like if it came on the radio, I wouldn't change it. Like if I heard "I Believe I Can Fly," I probably wouldn't change it. Because when I listen to the music, I don't associate it with that artist or that person that's singing it.
That's
or
fair.
the people that are playing the instruments. Like for me, it's more of like, oh yeah, I like this song. Or this song takes me back to this memory when I was younger. Or it involves these people that I was hanging with when that song was playing. Or I was doing this when I was listening to the song most of the time. So for me, like I wouldn't like go out and seek it. Like I wouldn't be like, I'm going to listen to R. Kelly today, or I'm going to listen to Michael Jackson. But if I was on the radio and I was listening to it, I'd let it play. I mean, I don't think I'm doing a disservice or perpetuating what they did by listening to the song.
That's fair and understandable. And it kind of sucks now because like there are a lot of artists that will actually there are a lot of artists that will hand out their personal phone numbers to fans, and like after that there are now sexual allegations against that artist for like requesting nudes. Like for example, the bass player from the band Camino, who is more up and coming modern rock band today. So their bass player that they had when they first started had been accused, like he was accused of like handing out his phone number to underage girls at concerts, and then like messaging them and requesting sexual explicit pictures. And once the accusations came out, the band kicked him out. Same thing with Tyler Carter from the band Issues. Have you heard?
That's not ironic at all.
No. Oh my God.
Did you not realize that? He got his band name Issues.
The band's name
That's
is
funny.
Issues, and their lead singer had been given like some sexual allegations, kicked him out.
Well, and that's honestly like that's fair. Like we live in a day and age where technology allows us to catch people in the act a lot faster than we did back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the 90s, we didn't have cell phones. And we were barely getting cell pagers, which was
Beeper.
a beeper. Yeah, it basically had a cell chip in it. And basically, you could send a series of numbers to it. Like that was texting back then.
Gotta send your crush 143.
Or 411, which was, I think, for my family, it was call me back or something like that. We had like another code that meant come home. And obviously, if 911, come now, emergency. But I mean, it's really interesting, like how technology has changed now. You know, our cameras back in the day were like ridiculously like low technological advancement.
Yeah, like 240 was the default high quality.
Just basically a box. And then now, we have these high definition cameras in our phones
HDMI
that were basically like super cameras, back 20 years from now. And everybody seems to be watching. Now we have cameras on our doorbells. We have cameras in our cars. Well, I mean dash cams. Like we don't actually have cameras in our cars yet. But I assume that at some point dash cams will just come with the package.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of different conspiracies out there and a lot of different things that people have come forward with more information that either negates or at least questions the original outcome that they created. Things like the John Benet Ramsey case, which was reopened. Unfortunately, it's still a cold case. I mean, they never solved it, but they definitely found a lot more information after going back and reopening it, looking at the evidence more objectively with more information, understanding of what we have today, which is more advanced than it was, years prior.
We got to talk about more crime cases. I'm all into that kind of ish.
Yeah, I love talking about that stuff. Well, maybe not crime cases, but just conspiracy theories, like did we go to the moon? Could have
Yes.
could it have been faked?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also do think that we did go to the moon. So,
and like the Roswell, the alleged crash landing in Roswell, New Mexico, did something crash there? Did we, did we, as in the government, find a crash landing and recovered bodies that were not of this world? And why did the newspaper retract, shortly after they said, we have a flying saucer? And they went, oh, just kidding. It's a weather balloon.
Did the aliens build the pyramid?
Did the aliens build the pyramids?
Is the Earth?
Were there ancient aliens?
Is the Earth flat?
Well, I mean, we can. There's a lot of contra evidence to flat Earth, but anyways, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, the Periodic Review. Please make sure to like and follow us. We are on almost every. Well, not almost every. Hopefully we'll get to other services, but we are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We are on
The Gram.
We're on TikTok. We are on, what was the other one?
Your mom.
Twitch. We're on Twitch. Wow. I must be tired. But anyways, this episode is brought to you by viewers like you. So thank you. And you all have a wonderful night. And we will, as always, see you in the next one. And cue outro.